money was really no object for me at that time for me and my lifestyle. And I kind of never looked back. I just built my business bigger and bigger because I had a bigger bankroll. There's a lot of bookmakers in the country that had, I would say, a bigger client base as far as amount, but volume wise and dollar amounts, I would say definitely one of the larger ones in the country. Obviously, the interpreter, as you know, bet $326 million through my website in about 18 months. I don't think you'll find too many bookmakers in the country that will take that kind of volume.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Crime and Entertainment. I got a very special guest here. Forgive my voice; I'm a little hoarse. I was at 3 concerts in 3 days this weekend, so I'm a little shy on the voice levels. But please welcome to the show, Matt Bowyer. Matt, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, Wade. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I've been looking forward to this interview because I seen it on a mutual friend of ours, Brett Cassidy, I think's his name. Yep, seen it on his show, and I've always been into, the betting, sports, gambling, and things like that, and yours just really kinda hit home, and I was like, "Man, I really need to get in touch with this guy." I messaged you on Instagram, you hit me back, and here we are. And basically, in a nutshell, before we get into your story, because I like to start from the beginning, but just to let people know, you were essentially probably one of the largest bookies in the United States, and you were taking bets from any and everybody, and some of them were very well-known Major League Baseball players. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say, there's a lot of bookmakers in the country that had, I would say, a bigger client base as far as amount, but volume wise and dollar amounts, I would say definitely one of the larger ones in the country. Obviously, the interpreter, as you know, bet $326 million through my website in about 18 months. I don't think you'll find too many bookmakers in the country that will take that kind of volume.
No, and I'll be honest with you, I heard about that when it happened, but I am not a baseball guy, so I don't pay a lot of attention to baseball. Was there fallout from that from him? Like, did he get in trouble for that?
He's in prison right now in Pennsylvania.
I didn't even know that. Are you
Yeah,
serious?
yeah, he got sentenced to, I believe it's just under 5 years, a few months shy of 5 years, and sadly, yeah, he's dealing with the fallout of that right now.
Okay, so the interpreter was stealing from Ohtani on top of the other okay, so he's
Correct.
he's currently did Ohtani have any fallout from this?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your
Yeah.
question. Of course he's had fallout because people have completely questioned his career in regards to the gambling side of it, and of course, a lot of people think that he was behind the scenes pulling the trigger, and Ippei was his puppet, and that he was gambling. And of course, it's easy for people to say that. I could see why that would
Yeah.
be said. So yeah, he's had some fallout because at the end of the day, I mean, he's always going to have a little bit of a taint to his name structured with this, sadly.
Well, and I think Pete Rose, the late great Pete Rose, rest in peace. He had that for a lot of his career after the fact when he got busted for the gambling. But I mean, I think as long as you're not doing it on your own team or against your team, like I gotta think if you're betting on yourself, you're not going to go out there and throw a damn game if you're laying money down on your own team to win.
Completely agree. And rest in peace, Pete. He was a client of mine, became a friend of mine, and what a great guy. Truly, his personality was very infectious. No question.
No, I love him. I loved him to death. I think I had 3 different Pete Rose jerseys. One of them's actually autographed. I was a huge Pete fan. Sadly, I never got to meet him in person, but I was a huge Pete guy. So that, that gives people a little taste of the story. So let's start a little bit from the beginning, man. Where'd you grow up? What was home life like? And then we'll work our way forward.
Yeah, of course. I grew up in Cypress, California, which is North Orange County. I lived in Orange County my whole life, and basically middle class neighborhood. I was very fortunate. I had a great family. I have no excuses for my upbringing to led me to being in trouble where I am today. My mom and dad, ironically, owned a bail bonds company called Boyer Bail Bonds, and so they were bailing people like me out of jail. And which is ironic. But truth be told, we were the family in the neighborhood that kind of had, all the nicer things of a middle class neighborhood. We had a river house and a boat and a jet ski and quads, and we were able to kind of purchase and get everything we wanted as kids. We never really struggled for the basic essentials. If we joined a baseball team, we'd go out and buy a brand new baseball bat and glove. So I was pretty blessed as a young boy, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. And that's always a good when you're coming because I always have these conversations with people. Even if you're on the poor side as a kid, you don't really realize you're poor until you get to like middle school, and then you start seeing what everybody else has got, and then you're like, oh wow, that kid's got this or that, and growing up like that, man, yeah, you can't ask for a whole lot. And the bail bondsmen, I'm sure they probably made pretty good money. I got a friend that's a bail bondsman; he makes a killing.
Yeah, especially back then, the percentages they took was a lot higher than they are today.
Yeah,
And my dad was an entrepreneur. He had a air tool supply company as well, and he was always an entrepreneur. And then my mom worked her tail off as well. So between the two of them, we never really struggled financially until I turned about 12, and that's when the alcohol abuse that my dad was. He became a really bad alcoholic, and when he came back from the Vietnam War, he met my mom a few years later, and the alcohol kind of became a problem. I'd say when I was maybe 3 to 4 years old, and then progressed to where when I was 12, unfortunately, he just couldn't control it. He was drinking about 30 to 40 beers a day, eating one meal, and still able to run a business because in the bail bonds business back then, it was yellow pages. That's our form of advertising back then. There was, no
yeah.
social media, no internet. And so he just sat around and drank beer all day, waiting for the phone to ring. And to be honest, it just escalated, and his addiction to alcohol just became worse and worse. And then, after about 4 or 5 rehabs and us trying everything as a family to kind of, be part of that, my mom just threw in the towel. It was just too much.
Okay. And I mean, is he still around? And he pass away or
Oh
like
yeah, he
what?
passed away at 55. Sadly, clearly the alcohol abuse over let's call it 30 years of drinking that much just did too much damage to his body. It developed all kinds of brain tumors and all kinds of things that were all really alcohol based. But and at the end of the day, he was smoking 3 packs of cigarettes, eating one meal, and truth be told, the minute that our family kind of dissipated as far as a family unit and he kind of went off on his own, it just got even worse, of course, because it's easy to use alcohol to kind of feel numb the pain.
Oh yeah, 100%. Did that stem from like the time in Vietnam? You mentioned Vietnam, but was that PTSD kind of what put on the onset? Okay, that's horrible, man.
He definitely struggled. We couldn't watch, war movies, Platoon, things like that. He would turn it right away. Obviously,
Yeah,
lost a lot of close friends, and um, you know, being an addicted gambler myself, I don't even for him, I don't blame. Even though he went through that, and that's a tough time in your life. At the end of the day, when you have an addiction, you got to look in the mirror. And even though my father went through some tough things, I blame him, and just like I blame myself for my addiction.
and probably too back then though. I don't think they have as much stuff out there that can allow you to get help nowadays like they do. Like now they have a lot of stuff for that. Back then they didn't. I don't even know if they knew what PTSD was back then. You were just kind of get on with it and move on.
I agree. I think nowadays there's so much more available to help people with all of those things, even addiction, right? I mean, there's so many
Yeah,
more treatment centers and things
yeah,
out there that help people. Of course, there's on the flip side of that, there's a lot more things to draw you into getting into
correct.
trouble,
Yeah,
social media, things like that. That
probably way more of the latter than than the help on the other end. So so when you guys split, does that kind of that turns your family dynamic upside down?
Yeah, so I was 12. My mom finally kicked my dad out of the house. I had 3 brothers, and my 2 older brothers. One was going into the Coast Guard at the time, and then my other brother, who's 5 years older than me, he was basically in high school and kind of, doing his thing with friends, and wasn't really didn't care too much about the family dynamic at that point. When you're a high schooler, you're just playing sports and hanging out with your friends. And then, of course, my little brother was 4 years younger than me. So it was really just him and I and my mom. And she was just trying to keep the house and trying to keep our somewhat of a normal lifestyle in order. And, she started Creative Cakes by Linda, a company doing that, selling Jaffa products, working as a kidney dialysis, technician. I mean, basically any job that she could to provide and keep us in that house and just, give us the same sort of lifestyle. And I watched that struggle, and it always made me to this day remember, what it's like to go from not rags to riches, because we were never really rags, but and we were never really riches, but as a 12-year-old boy, you feel that, you feel like it's riches
Yeah.
to rags. And for me, just watching that lifestyle, being taken away from us, given my dad's the one who did it, but taken away from us, I just never wanted to ever go through that again. And I never wanted my children to also feel the same damage, or even just feel the pain of having so many great things in life and then having them taken away. So I've always hustled. I've always been a hustler since I was a young boy, since I was 12. And that's the time where I started kind of fending for myself, and which led me to eventually being a bookmaker, and which we can get into all the things I did at that point, being an Orange County paper boy. I sold the Orange County Register at 14 years old. I was going door to door. This woman would come by in a van and pick us up, and a bunch of kids from 14 to 18 years old. We'd go to apartment complexes and houses, and I'd sell the Orange County Register. And I broke the record in the county for sales, and ended up being the number one sales kid at that time. And it really taught me grit, hustle, determination, and really just how to sell, even though I was only 14.
Yeah.
And so I developed this work ethic, and of course, I was delivering the paper too, and collecting baseball cards, and just hustling. Just trying to avoid asking my mom for $20 for this or $10 for this. And I was really proud of the fact that I was able to kind of do that on my own.
Yeah. And that's usually where it starts, man, when you gotta get out there and hustle and you just figure out ways to make money and then getting comfortable talking to people. Cause that's the key, man. I always tell people like networking will open more doors for you than any college degree ever will. And I'll put that on anything.
I agree. I totally agree with you. Yeah, and there's a lot of kids nowadays that are getting college degrees. They can't even get a job, and
Yeah.
you have a kid who's a hustler who's got a network, and those doors are a lot more open for them.
I was telling my kid the other day, I said, man, when I was your age, my dad worked at this beer joint where I was introduced to gambling and race pools and poker machines and all that at a young age. But the guy and him were real good friends. So when the candy would get to the point where it was going to expire, like within a week or a couple of weeks or whatever, he'd give it to me. And it was like little quarter size candies. So I'm in, elementary, I'm taking them to school and I'm selling them for a quarter a piece. I'm making, 5, $6. And I mean, that was a big deal back then. It's a couple movies on the weekend or something.
Yeah, you're hustling.
Or yeah, and I always done that. It always progressed all the way up. It went from candy to CDs when burning CDs was a thing, and then it was the movies when burning movies was a thing. It's just always progressed, and you make friends that way, you make contacts that way. It always lead into other things. But so I was like, man, I was selling everything at your age. Jerseys, shoes, knockoff stuff. We go to the drag strip, and the guy would have all the knockoff stuff there. I'd buy it at the drag strip and then resell it at school for a quarter up the what I paid for them. Just buy for $1, sell for two, man. That's the American way.
100%. I was doing the same thing. I mean, when I was riding my bike around delivering newspapers, I would throw the paper, and if I saw a kid my age or younger, even older, or whatever, I would ask them if they had baseball cards. And I had the knowledge of collecting baseball cards, and obviously learning which ones are more valuable. So, I would trade them commons for Ken Griffey Jr. rookies, Roger Clemens rookies, etc. And I was hustling the kid, of course, and doing what I could to get the better end of the deal. But that's part of it, right? And then I was selling pencils that had the football names on them. Obviously the Chicago Bears or whatever the team was good that year at school. You can buy them through the little machine. I would end up buying them, outside of the school, bring them into school, sell them for cheaper price. But of course, I'm buying them from cheaper. So just little hustles like that. So I feel you.
Oh yeah,
And it spills over though to later in your life, right? Just
it
exactly why
does.
you are who you are today.
It does. All right, so progresses from there, man. You get the paper out. You're kind of learning the art of the hustle. You're honing your craft. Where do we go from there?
Yeah, so about 16, I started working at a baseball card shop. Norm Johnson, the kicker for the Seattle Seahawks, opened a baseball card shop in Orange County, and I was working for him. So I sold my baseball card collection for $3,800. Bought my first truck, which back then, $3,800, 34 years ago, was a lot of money.
Yeah,
And so I bought my car. I didn't have to ask my mom for money for a car. And over this like 4-year period, you could feel the tension of my mom. I could tell she was financially behind on everything and starting to kind of dissipate. Our finances were getting worse and worse. But progressively over the next 2 years, I started doing anything more to hustle. So I worked at a Chevron gas station, started selling marijuana out of there. My older brother was selling weed, and I thought that was, a good hustle at the time because, I was never really into drugs. I never even tried any drugs, and never, and to this day, I've never done cocaine or even tried a drug in my life. other than weed. I smoked weed when I was, tried it when I was a kid, but which is legal everywhere now. But long story short, I was just selling weed and trying anything I could to avoid, again, asking my mom for money. That was my biggest thing. I just wanted to avoid putting more pressure on her. And I started building this, little hustle between the baseball cards. And then I started taking sports bets at roughly 16, 17 years old. And I became known as kind of the little bookie in the town for the high school kids. And then everybody knew I was, not afraid to gamble. So then I started running a little poker game in my house, and that escalated quickly to a pretty good little profit for me. But turned to a problem when one of the kids took an IOU sheet in his pocket. His mom was doing the laundry, and there was a list of some of the outstanding debts, which were, when you're 16, $340 was like 8 million. So they called an intervention at my mom's house. Actually, I have four moms at the house raiding my poker game, let's call it, as the FBI. And that got shut down real quickly. And then I said, okay, I'm gonna have to find other measures. So the poker game ended pretty abruptly.
Were you taking cuts of the game or just like chipping the pot? Was that how you were making the money on that? Or
Yeah, and then I would even charge the kids to come over to play, and then
oh
like treat it like it was my own Boyer casino, right?
yeah,
And
nice.
but more importantly, I was actually so good at playing poker at the time. I don't think I'm so great at it now, but I was so good at it at the time. I would just beat them at poker and or play two card guts or two card balls they call it,
Yeah.
and I had the guts. Most of them didn't, so I would outplay them in most of those things too, and end up winning money off of pretty much everybody coming there.
Yeah, guts is that this game where like the pots and they can get pretty big and you if you miss it then you either sometimes you got to double the pot. Yeah, yeah.
That and AC Ducey or in between, another game
In, be-
where yes,
in between is that one. That's the one I'm talking about because like if you bet the pot and then the card happens to be one of the cards on the outside, then you got to double the pot. So $500 one can come into 1,500 real quick.
quick, yep,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
100%. And most kids at that age, 300, $400 is, especially 34 years ago, is so much money that even if they had the perfect scenario, they weren't,
be scared to do it. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, and
yeah,
whereas I wasn't. So that obviously played into my hand. As you know, when you're gambling, if you're playing scared, the odds are so much more against
yeah.
you. And I've always been the opposite of that, sometimes to my detriment, where I wasn't afraid, and it backfires, of course, many times.
Oh yeah, and I learned a lot of those things like that. Like I said, my dad would go to the poker rooms and the poker games, and I would watch them. And it's like every hand or every couple of hands, they would take a five and then put it in this beer. They took the top of like an 18 pack of beer and cut the top of it off, and they would just drop the money in there. And like at the end of the night, when they got done, I mean that thing would be fun. I was like, holy shit, who gets all that money? And he's like, he does. He run the game. He chips the pot. So I was like, wow, that's cool. I need to do that when I get older. That guy's, I mean, to me, that looked like $1 million. You know what I'm saying? But, he gives them food and he's got their fridge with beer and stuff like that. So it's, I get what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, there's a little cost in running the operation, but
Yeah, there is. People think there's not no cost, but like you do have some cost set up and associated
right,
with it.
right. But still, the house is always going to win, and that's
Oh
really
yeah,
a great factor there, especially there because there's no risk other than
right.
back then getting in trouble. But at the end of the day, if it's a small little poker
Yeah.
game, no one's going to bother you.
So gladly this time the moms shut you down. Where do you go from there?
So I'm about 16, 17 when this happens. And then obviously a year later, I'm graduating high school. And right about that time, I got caught from my mom with a scale and a pound of weed. And she had enough. She had to put her foot down. So she gave me the axe, kicked me out of my house. And I was just about to graduate high school. So I went and moved in with a buddy of mine. And I would say maybe there was 2 months left before I was graduating high school. And then we went on a senior trip right after we graduated. And then, of course, I didn't shut down my little weed operation. So when I came home to his house, his mom had a scale on the counter, and of course, I had to answer those questions and immediately leave that house. So, you know, I wasn't learning my lesson because to me, I've always been fascinated with an easy dollar and being greedy and wanting the easy buck, and I'm still guilty of it to this day, which is why I'm in this position I'm in. But at the end of the day, I just picked up and moved out and got an apartment with my at the time girlfriend, who became my ex-wife. And so we moved into our first apartment at 18. I just turned 18, and with a buddy of mine. And so we're in Huntington Beach, California, and paying rent now, which to me was something new, of course. And when you're 18, and so I had to go get a job. So I got a job at Massimo Clothing Company in the warehouse, and then at also in the morning I worked at the it's John Wayne Airport, Orange County Airport, at the gift shops, stocking the magazines, whatnot. So I had these two jobs that were paying me enough to pay rent and pay for a car payment and just be normal in a sense of paying the normal basics to get by in life. But I was really unhappy because I've always kind of outdid what was required, or did something in my opinion above and beyond what's normal. I've never been really normal in my mind, so I just couldn't do this. I mean, I was working basically 16 hours a day to just survive and get by, and I was like, and at the end of the day, like on my days off, I still had that gambling itch. I was still betting sports and taking a few small bets, and then I'd go to the racetrack, because in that time period between 16 and 18, I worked at the racetrack selling programs at Los Alamitos, because I just love gambling. I love being around horses and all that stuff. So I would still use my spare dollars and spare money to go gamble, always trying to make a score or kind of the quick buck, which was, something that's ingrained in me, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
about, maybe, I don't know, 6 months into that, I realized this was kind of I would say a path to somewhere I don't want to go. Just kind of working for 16 hours, let's call it 80 hours a week, 75 hours a week, just to get by, is not the lifestyle I wanted. And I definitely didn't want to go to college because I couldn't afford to pay rent and go to college, and college really wasn't my thing. So at that time, I made a decision to move back in with my mom, who at this point in her life lost our home, and she had to move to Dana Point, California, and rented a double wide mobile home, which was really pride swallowing. I could feel, not only for her but even for me, to kind of watch. We had the nicer house in the neighborhood and had all the toys, and now we're living. I mean, she's living in a mobile home park. So anyway, long story short, in that process, my ex-wife, my girlfriend at the time, is gets pregnant. So to add to my problems, now I'm 18, don't really have a real job, don't have any career path, and now I have a baby coming on. I can barely take care of myself. So we decided to move in with my mom, and she had a two-bedroom. Of course, I wasn't allowed to sell weed. That was very clear. But she had a two-bedroom mobile home. My little brother in one room, her in another. So my ex-wife and I slept on the couch, and I had this really piece of crap car at this time. It was a lot. I ended up selling my truck or whatever, and I had a hoopty. And we were just like, I just looked in the mirror and said, "What am I doing?" And so I said, "I got to go get a real job." So in the community I was living in Dana Point, California, it's kind of it was newer at the time. They're opening some newer areas of restaurants and things like that. So I went to the local restaurant, and it's a restaurant called Chevy's. It's a food chain, and you've probably heard of it, Mexican restaurant, and I think they're out of business now. But I walked into this restaurant, and I just figured, at an 18-year-old kid, being a waiter is kind of a really good income for an 18-year-old kid. So even though it's not a really career path for me, I figured I can make decent money, save up a few bucks, start my own business, whatever, figure it out. So I walk in this restaurant. The GM is taking all the interviews because it's not even open yet, and so he interviews me. I tell him I have no experience. He says, "There's no way I can give you a job as a waiter. You have no experience." And I said, "Well, can you give me a job?" He says, "As a busboy." And I said, "Well, that's minimum wage plus a few dollars in tips. It's not really gonna wet the whistle, but I need a job." So I took it. So I go in this restaurant, and it's a very affluent area, and a lot of wealthier people kind of in that area. So I knew that I'd find something within that opportunity. That was my mind frame. If I could work my way up to a waiter fast, great. But if I meet somebody who comes in the restaurant and use my charisma and personality to try to get something, I will. So after about 3 months of working there, this couple kept coming in. Really, you could tell had a lot of money. Very well spoken. Actually had a English accent, and he was American Indian. And so I built relationships with people. I started making more money as a busboy than most of the waiters, because I was getting tipped, because even though I was serving chips and salsa and water, I would take the opportunity to make up for their errors, just be personable, try to, whatever was wrong with the meal or whatever, I would try to be the guy fixing it, even though I wasn't the waiter. And people appreciated it. So I would get tipped on the side, whatnot. And eventually, this gentleman and his wife offered me an opportunity, and I said, I'll take it. And they said, well, you don't even know what it is. I said, it doesn't matter. It's not chips and salsa. So, so long story short, I had to go to Marshall's and get a tie. I didn't even have a tie at the time, and a cheap shirt. And I drove down to an interview in Irvine, California. And I pull into this. I'll never forget. I pull into this corporate building, and there's Ferraris and Mercedes and just nice, all these dream cars I always wanted. And I walk into this building and it just had this aura of money and excitement and young guys, mostly young. I'd say ages from maybe 22 to 45. And there were a few older gentlemen, but mostly that age group. And these guys just had that feel of the Wolf of Wall Street. And so, I sit down for this interview, and the gentleman who I met at the restaurant was not the same gentleman who interviewed me, meaning it was the same person, but it was not the same detriment, as far as personality. And he absolutely grinded me. And after 3 interviews of making me feel like literally an imbecile, why didn't you, go to college? How did you get your girlfriend pregnant at 18? You've done nothing with your life. And, a lot of it's true, but I'm a person that always will stand up and defend myself. And, I'm not perfect, but I'm not going to let somebody belittle me. So at the middle of the 3rd interview, I just looked at him. I said, listen, I don't know what you want me to say or what you expected from me. I'm not going to make excuses for why I'm 18 and I'm not in college or ultra successful yet. But I will tell you this: there's nobody in this building that's going to work as hard as me, and there's nobody in this building that's going to take this opportunity and run with it more than I will. So I'm going to leave it up to you. I'm not going to sit here and let you continue to make me feel like I'm completely unqualified. If that's the case, then don't hire me. And he loved it. He immediately hired me because I just showed some grit, a little bit of fire back, so to speak, and gave me the opportunity. So the job was $1,200 a month before taxes, and I was running the mailroom, working 65 hours a week, which was 1,200 bucks to me then actually was decent money. So long story short, I got this great job. I'm very excited, and I didn't really even know what it was. Well, what it was a commodity brokerage firm, and just like the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy. And these guys are trading, corn, soybeans, crude oil, you name it. And walking in this building every day was the best thing. I started at 5:30. I got off at 6 at night, and truly, I even though it was long hours, I loved every minute of it. So I was the first. What I didn't realize is I was the first contact to the brokerage firm, because back then no internet, and it was all phone related. So a new prospect would call our firm. I would take the phone call. I would transfer that phone call to the broker of the day. That broker would proceed to sell what he does and what he provides. We're a full service brokerage firm. And when I would do that, we were on headsets. I would just hit mute and send the call through. And if I didn't have another call coming in, I would listen to the sales and learn. And I wasn't supposed to do that, but there's no harm in that, right? So I was a sponge. I just started learning. So then I started studying on the side the Series 3 exam. And in this position, working for this mailroom position, I actually was luckily the personal assistant of the owner, the same guy I interviewed with. His name was Mickey. And he was the smartest guy I've ever met in my life. He was, at the time, 29 years old, already a multimillionaire, and just the wealth of knowledge, but a savage in business. And I just sponged all that time with him. Fast forward about 6 months, I went up to him and said, listen, I'd like to take the Series 3 exam. And he looked at me and says, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I'm ready. And he says, well, you don't even know what the Series 3 exam exists of. You know what it is. But I said, I'm ready to take it. He said, well, you're not even an assistant broker. We offer this exam to assistant brokers who've been, learning the training and have done the sales, and more importantly, have actually know what they're talking about. So I handed him a stack of flashcards and I said, ask me any question. He bust out the flashcards. He asked me, I don't know, 4 or 5 questions. Of course, I answered them. And he said, wow, you've been studying? I said, yeah, I'm ready to go. And he goes, well, let's do this. Let's work on getting you a replacement. Let me promote you to an assistant. Then at that point, after 6 months to a year, I'll let you take the exam. And I said, how about this? If I don't pass the exam, you can fire me. He says, okay, wow, you're that confident, huh? I said, yeah. He says, all right, let's do it. So long story short, they had to sponsor me. It was like 400 bucks or something back then. So I go into this, exam where it's a government exam. You're under camera, pass it. I've never even taken a test since high school. Didn't even care during high school. So I was nervous, but I passed it barely. There's 2 parts to it. And it was one of the best days of my life. I drive back with this hoopty, and I realized I have a future now. So he ends up promoting me to an assistant broker. I retrained somebody to run the mailroom. And because of everything I shown, he put me with the top broker. So we managed to break every record in the company for the next year. And within 12 months, I was promoted to run a brand new brokerage firm he opened. It was a discount firm. And he had me run it because of all the, work and stuff I've done. So at 20 years old, I'm now a licensed Series 3 broker making, 300 grand a year. And
Dang.
fast forward, of course, I'm still gambling and still doing all the stuff I love to do on the side. But now that I'm making real money, the gambling is starting to really step up. And while I'm betting sports and being a complete degenerate, I'm also taking bets from people. And the office that I was working in, had all these guys making a shit ton of money. So for me, it was a breeding ground for building my sports book. And even though that wasn't really my intention or goal, it started to become one. And these guys just had more money than they knew what to do with. And they were spending it on cocaine, hookers. Most of them weren't married. They're just young single guys making a lot of money and enjoying their life. And gambling was part of that.
It's the perfect opportunity for you at that point taken, man.
It really was. And, I was a family guy already. I had, a baby at this point, an actual daughter. And, I was never into drugs. I love gambling and I drink a little bit, but it wasn't my thing. So, you're feeding my passion. And basically, commodity trading is legalized gambling anyway. So that's why I loved it as well. So, I was in the perfect storm. And if you fast forward about 6 months, at 21 years old, I purchased, ironically, the home that I grew up in became up for sale. And I went back and purchased it, which was one of the bigger achievements of my life, buying the home that my mom lost and my parents lost. So at 21 years old, I moved my 2-year-old daughter into my old home and was sleeping in my parents' room. Ironically, as the now male owner of the house and now the dad, which was really cool and ironic, and it was a really weird feeling. It was such a prideful moment to be back in my neighborhood driving a Mercedes. And so all the local kids, I call them kids, we were 21, but 21-year-old guys that I went to high school with, they were so intrigued by what just transpired that now I hired 40 of them, literally 40 from my old neighborhood, came and started working under me. And so we built this little discount brokerage firm, and I broke every retail commodity broker record in the country for the next 11 years for numbers of commissions and sales, and it was a great experience in my life. But in that process, of course, the gambling and the bookmaking became a whole different level. And at 21, I went to Vegas for my first time. I tell this in my book, Recalibrate, that I went to San Remo, which was it's a hotel that's no longer even there. And I was broke. I wasn't broke, but my friends were all broke, so they got a room and they're all dogpiled in a room. And me and at the time, my girlfriend ended up being my ex-wife. We got our own room at San Remo, and I walked in the place. And I'm like, this is a dump. I'm starting to get that ego going because I'm making good money. And so I walked out of there and went to New York Hotel and Casino at the time. And mind you, this is 29 years ago. And they had the roller coaster, and it was kind of a newer hotel. And so I walked in there and I started gambling, and I ended up winning 25,000 at 21 years old, which was a pretty big number. And so the casino host comes up to me and she says, "Hey, I'm gambling very high," and offers me her service. And next, offers me a penthouse suite and yada yada yada. So now I have 10 of our friends are 21 years old who are broke in our room that's bigger than a football field inside the New York, and they think I'm God because I'm gambling this crazy amount of money at 21, and we're in a room that a 21-year-old kid would never dream of, and living it up. Lobster and caviar and whatever. I mean, things that 21-year-old kids would not be able to afford. So that taste and that dopamine rush just got worse. Yeah.
So addictive, man, so addictive. I mean, I don't know if I've ever had it quite like that, but I've had some close calls like that, and it's it's something that unless you just had it, or at least some variation of that happened to you, you can't. It's not like any other thing you can imagine. Even a drug, I don't think has ever done that for me. And like you, I've really done nothing. I've smoked a little pot here and there, but like I guess that's maybe what drug addicts get, what we get from that.
I agree with you. I think everybody has a version of their highest high, right? And for me, it's always been gambling. I enjoy getting cocktailed up once in a while and feeling a little bit out of my skin and kind of releasing the stress of life. But really it's gambling. That the dopamine rush of being at the highest high, and just feeling, the winning of the money, whether it's a football game or a cards or whatever it is. For me, it's just an extreme high. And any gambler who's really into gambling, they understand it, right?
Well, I always say there's that greatest line in the movie, The Color of Money, is when Paul Newman looks at Tom Cruise's character and he says, "Money won is twice as sweet as money earned." And I still say that to this day. Like I can make whatever in a week's paycheck, but I know I busted my ass for it. But if I can win $500 on a Monday night because, Aaron Rodgers covered the spread, that's just, I'm like, you can't explain it.
It's true. It's something about, you feel like you didn't work for it, so it
Yeah.
feels that much better, right?
Yeah.
But the sad thing is, it should be the opposite, right? When you go grind and work your ass off, and you make $500 in this case, you should enjoy that even more.
Right. And it just doesn't work like that for
It
some.
doesn't. I wish it did, because then I wouldn't be in this predicament I'm in now. But it is. It's a sick, twisted addiction, because that dopamine high is so, you're always chasing it. And I get heroin addicts. I can understand, because it's similar to me. I mean, even though I've never done heroin, I imagine it's got to be very similar. And you're
Got
always
it.
chasing that high, right? And you always want to feel that high. And it's like, that's why they end up never stopping, right?
So you got them all in the penthouse. Where are we going from there?
Yeah, so I'm 21, and now money's not really an object for me, for considering my age. And so, I got the cars, I got the house. I'm already getting things that are the American dream at 21. So now, at this point in my life, I really don't even understand or appreciate the value of money. This is kind of where it all starts. And that probably was my demise of where I stand today, because I think since I was 21, I've never appreciated money since, the true value of money,
Right.
which is really sad, actually, if you think about what I just said, given the amount of money I've dealt with, over $50 million, in and out, and probably lost 50 million, total over the last 30 years, in casinos and sports books and bookies, and, et cetera. So, I mean, if you really think about that dollar amount and the amount that has gone through my hands, it's incredible. I was betting $300,000 a hand at my peak in Baccarat every 30, 35 seconds. I bet $4.6 million on the Kansas City Chiefs in the 2023 Super Bowl, and I won. I got lucky; they came back and won against the Eagles. But that if I didn't get in trouble that same year by the feds, I would have probably bet in 2024 Super Bowl 6 million or 8, or who knows. Like the highs just getting higher and higher. And of course, when you don't, for me at least, when I wasn't betting enough, if I won, I felt like I lost.
You did. Yep. I was about to say that the same thing. And I'm sure most people watched the movie Casino. And when the guy comes in there, he's like, he was usually betting 100,000 hand, but then he dropped it to 10,000. He was like, he didn't even look at it as winning 10,000. He looked at it as losing 90,000.
Yeah, that's correct, and that's
Yeah.
that's when you really have a problem. And
Yeah.
believe me, I've been guilty of it so much, and that exactly what destroyed and cost me, because I really wasn't a bad. People ask me all the time, were you good at sports betting? And I said, truthfully, no, I was terrible, and I'll tell you why. It wasn't that I wasn't good at handicapping. It was that I wasn't good at money managing, or I was betting the maximum I possibly could just to get down and get my veins pumping. And
Yeah.
there was no skills of, okay, this is a 7 unit bet. This is a 10 unit. Everything was a 100 unit bet. 100, bet as much as you possibly can. And over time, you got no shot. Just like betting the max of blackjack every hand. I don't care if you're the best counter in the world. You're not counting cards if you're betting the max on every hand. There's no counting necessary.
Yeah.
So, that's why I was a terrible sports bettor. Ironically, when it comes to tables, though, I was better at that, managing my money. I had a really bad run right before the feds came to me in 2023, the worst run I've ever had in my life. But I had some great runs prior to that. I won 5.5 million at Cosmo. They shut me off. So I've had some big runs. But then I've had, of course, colossal damage, which was at Resorts World, where I lost $9 million
Hmm.
in basically 8 months. And that was one of the worst runs I've ever had. I just kept losing every trip.
Have you completely just given up the brokerage shit at this point? Or are you still doing that?
Yeah, so I was a commodity trader all the way until I was 30 years old.
Okay.
Um, at Sorry, I'm skipping here. So at 28 years old, at this point, I've already opened a boat dealership. which failed dramatically. That was my brother and I had this envision of thinking, because we love boats and we grew up on the river. We thought we'd just open a boat dealership in Orange County. That was the dumbest decision ever, because the cost of rent in Orange County is, that's why there's no boat dealerships as far as jet boats. They're all in like Riverside and cheaper areas for rent. So anyway, that was a disaster. A couple $1 million on ATVs and all that. But long story short, about at 28, I opened my own brokerage firm called Aliso Trading Group with my brother, and the gentleman I worked for, Mickey, ended up selling his brokerage firm for $88 million in 2026 or 27. So he had a non compete, had to stay on the company for a little while, and I was loyal to him. So once he that ran out, I was allowed, loyalty wise, to leave and go start my own firm. So once he gave me that approval, that's when my brother and I went and started our own commodity firm, built our own, brand, so to speak. And then at that time is when I really hated trading commodities. I realized how gritty and dirty the business was, which is real ironic. I talk about this in my book. Here I am running a legal business, we're doing nothing illegal, accepting money to trade commodities, where I would say that 95% of the investors lost because it's a racket. It's really tough to win at, but when you do make money at it, you can make some big scores, which is why people do it. You have like a gentleman put in 50,000 and he can make 3 million. It happens, but it's one of 100.
Right.
Long story short, most of them put in 50,000, their money's gone within a year. But I hated it because you're calling a farmer in Iowa who's 70 years old, and my job as a sales guy is to get every dollar I can for him to invest in the market. And at the end of the day, I knew that most likely he's going to lose most of his money, or at least this investment. But yet here I am authorizing and selling on how great the markets are, which I'm not lying to him per se. I mean, he has a chance of making money, but let's be honest, I'm selling, right?
Yeah.
And I don't believe in what I'm selling, and I don't even like what I'm selling, because I know the end result is probably negative. Whereas running a sports book, the player has a close to 50-50 chance of making a wager. Yeah, then most of the time, sports betting, people do lose, including myself. I'm guilty of losing plenty of money doing it. But we pick and choose what we're betting on. We control our own money management. I'm not advising people on what to pick on the market or in the sports. Whereas the market, I'm literally coercing somebody to invest in corn or soybeans.
You're leading them down something they don't necessarily believe in themselves. You're making them believe it. Whereas a gambler, they're either going to pick the Dolphins or the Jets, or whatever the case may be. You're not twisting their arm to do it.
And the reality is, in my opinion, I mean, let's be real. Sports betting can get out of control for addiction purpose, and some
Oh yeah.
people have a problem with it. But for the most people who bet responsibly, if you bet $500 or 50, doesn't matter, whatever the dollar amount is on Dolphins and Jets, great example you said, right? That 3 hour window, if they bet $500, is entertainment for them. And
Yes.
if they
100%.
lose, yeah, of course they wanted to win. They don't want to pay the $500. Nobody likes paying money, right? Or losing. But the value of the entertainment was worth it, you know? And that's what I really valued about that business. So I'm not justifying being an illegal sports book or bookmaker, but I am telling you why I chose to walk out of the commodity business and go right into something I loved and I had a passion for, because of my clients to this day, because it's been 2 years since the feds raided my home, and I'll be in front of my judge here in about 3 weeks. I can get you 50 to 100 letters from my clients who have lost a lot of money gambling for me, that are begging to write a letter to my judge saying that they are very happy with the service I provided. They're wishing I still were doing it. And they are, even if I lost $1 million or $2 million to me, have absolutely zero problems with it whatsoever, and appreciated my service more than Las Vegas or any other DraftKings or FanDuel. That doesn't matter. The judge doesn't want to hear that or see that. But my point in saying this is I didn't feel really terrible about what I was doing, as a bookmaker, as opposed to a commodity trader. Now, flip side of that is, do I have clients that were, not telling me the truth about their finances and blowing money they couldn't afford and affecting their marriage and losing money they couldn't? Yeah, I mean, and I feel terrible for that, because at the end of the day, I'm human. I'm greedy. I have my own problems and flaws, but did I prey on those people? No, I didn't go around, looking for them. They came to me. But that part of the business was terrible. I hated that part for sure.
So you're rolling in this pretty heavy. You got some high profile clients at this time, I assume. And when I say high profile, at least high income clients.
I had both celebrities, athletes, of course, very high end, surgeons, eye surgeons, and guys that own big businesses, very
How
big.
did they just kinda find you by word of mouth?
What happened was I had what we call elephant balls. So a lot of bookmakers would would bring business to me that they didn't want because it was just too big for them.
Yeah,
So we would either partner up on it, split it 50-50, or they'd give it to me and I'd give them a cut of the action. Or they just were a little too nervous, a little too high for them. So when you get in that network, let's call it, clearly that network hangs out with other people with that network, and they start referring you business once you show them what kind of business you do. And to be honest, it was just word of mouth. And you get one celebrity, he might lead you to another, and here we go, right? And that's really how I built my business. And over time, especially the last 5 years, I was golfing with Charles Barkley and Travis Kelsey at the Celebrity Pro Am and Tahoe. And, you're around these guys. And when I walk into a casino with my entourage, because back then I had literally 12 people on our private jet flying in, I bring in 2 million, and you have the fancy watches and a Rolls Royce bringing you into the casino, and you're staying in the penthouse or the villa. I think my wife, you'll see if you haven't seen her, she's very attractive. So she kind of turns some heads when we walk around, and you're going backstage with, you know, concert tours or events. Pitbull, I was on stage with Pitbull, all kinds of things that random people aren't able to do.
right.
And the reason I was doing these things is because I was gambling at the highest level in the country, right? So it attracts people to wonder what the hell is this guy doing, and they're intrigued. So in that process, it was like a marketing tool for me because as I'm going throughout the country in different casinos, whether it's Bahamas, Dominican Republic, Panama, all these places I went, you know, I was young, especially I'm 50 now, but this goes back to when I'm 30. So when a 30-year-old kid comes into a casino with $1 million and, he's flaunting it around like it's nothing, which is truly I was guilty of, I think people wonder what the hell's going on. They're intrigued. And it makes people want to bet with me, and it actually drew me a lot of business. And then, frankly, I'm a pretty egotistical guy, to a degree. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm completely full of myself, but I'm confident, right? So, and I show that confidence in everything I do, sometimes maybe too much, but, that's what's got me to where I am. I believe in myself and I believe in, I exude that when I do anything in life. Even if I'm not the best, I think I'm the best, right? And I try not to be too arrogant about it, but I meant like when I'm doing something, I'm all in.
Yeah,
That being said, it attracts people to kind of want to see what they're doing, or because I'm attracted to people that way. I want to see, wow, why is this person so confident and believing in themselves, or what are they doing, what's working for them? And I think it's just helped me build my bookmaking business that I built. And of course, you know October 5th 2023 was when the FBI came, and there was 29 federal agents here at my home, and that's when it all stopped. And
so real I wanna back up just 1 minute, I got 2 questions. During this time, how the hell are you, like, putting out a way you're bringing in this cash with the IRS? And if you can't talk about it, that's fine, but it was just
no, no, I can. So when I filed as a on my tax return, I filed as a professional gambler.
okay,
And the reason for that is I was professional gambling. I was going around the country gambling at blackjack and sports betting and all the above. The problem with what happened, or what was my biggest issue was, which is funny because nobody understands this, but now I'm explaining it to you, is on my tax return, if I made $2 million on my sports betting business, my booking operation, and then I lost $2 million, even hedging it or screwing it off in the casino, I would try to offset my losses against my gains. But they don't view it that way. The IRS views it as that's your business and you got to pay taxes on it, which is why I have a falsified tax return charge, which is why I am looking at 5 years max in prison for my tax situation. A lot of people think I just said F you to the IRS and didn't pay. No, I paid a lot in taxes. In fact, Social Security will verify that when I'm 63, I have a pretty good chunk coming to me every month,
yeah.
Social Security, because I paid a lot, not only in the commodity business, but even as a professional gambler. But I definitely was wrong in that, and that's where I committed a crime. And in fact, I got charged a penalty of $1.25 million for that exact reason.
Okay. And now the next question is anybody that you can freely talk about, I don't wanna put anybody's business out there that's trying to keep it private. What was like the first big celebrity that wanted to bet with you that you can freely talk about that doesn't really care?
Sadly, none. I hate to burst your bubble. Even in my book, I don't throw anybody under the bus.
Right. Okay. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
And to be honest, a lot of them have won't talk to me. They're scared, especially given this current situation.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have just requested for me to please not speak of them, and I get why. I've actually changed the name in the book. If you read my book, it'll say a very high profile Hall of Fame athlete, and this particular sport. And to be honest, you can kind of figure out
Yeah.
your mind will tell you where to go with it. But the bottom line is, I just didn't want to sell anybody out. It would just cause havoc for them. And even though some of them aren't my personal friends, I just didn't feel that that was the right thing to do.
Oh,
Obviously, Shohei Ohtani, interpreter, is very obvious,
yeah.
but there was some definitely big name actors and celebrities that were they're betting with me, but I just can't say who they are.
No, I got you. Yeah. All right. Cool. That's why I said only if they're cool with it. I don't want to put anybody's shit out there. But that's very respectful though that you're keeping all that because I think it's a lost, I want to say virtue these days that people don't do that. The only one thing that I can remember back of, something of that magnitude that had that many people involved, especially in politics and everything else, was like Heidi Fleiss. People were scared to death that that damn black book was going to come out. I mean, some people got caught up, but I mean, like Charlie Sheen didn't give a shit if people knew he bought hookers. And he told me, he's like, I'm not paying for the women. He's like, I'm paying for him to leave after it's over.
Yeah, yeah, and you
You know?
got to give them credit just for owning it, right?
Yeah, so but yeah, she kept that black book shut, and she probably kept a lot of people in power and in play and in positions that could have very well had it jammed up. So, props to you for you doing that.
I appreciate it.
But
I just don't want to cause any havoc for people that
no,
don't
I
deserve it.
got you, and we don't want to do that either here. Your first bust with the feds, what led them to you, and tell us about that day.
Well, I was rated actually, believe it or not, March 25th of 2014.
Okay.
So that was 11 years ago, and they came to my home. There was about 14 agents. They took all the cash in my house, and they made an agreement with me. I signed what they call an abandonment form,
Mhm.
which states that I'll abandon the money and the proceeds, and I won't hire an attorney and go after the money and admit that I did illegal activity. And I signed that immediately, of course. And sadly, to me, that was kind of my ego involved here was get out of jail free card. So I
Yeah.
just went right back to work and built my business, which of course is not going to look good in front of prosecution and judge right now. But it is what it is, man. That's what I did. I also viewed it as I was 39 years old, father at the time of, let's see, four. So I didn't have my son yet. I'm a father of five now. And you know, changing my lifestyle would be the right thing to do, and go figure out a new career. But I was greedy, and I said, you know what, I want to continue to live the lifestyle I was living, and then more importantly, I had four kids, and I wanted to keep their lifestyle. So people judge me for that, but at the end of the day, unless you walk in my shoes, or maybe you would make a better decision, but I chose not to. And if that makes me a greedy bastard, then I'm a greedy bastard.
Well, probably a little bit there too, deep seated is you knew what happened when your father, come back from Vietnam and you had to change your lifestyle. So you don't want to project that on the kids. As fathers, whether it works out or whether it doesn't, we always want to try to put our families in better situations or our kids in better situations than we did. And that trend should always continue. So I think a part of that too is you just wanting to provide for them. So they just took what was in your house. They didn't take anything, bank accounts, properties, or anything like that. That's not a horrible deal, but they knew you were running a bookmaking operation.
Yeah, and I wasn't nearly as big as I ended up being, of course.
Right.
But truth be told, they came in March, and I just paid my taxes, literally. And
Okay.
they even mentioned that. They say, we see you pay taxes," because I did. I mean, I paid taxes. People,
Yeah.
that's what's funny about this. Like, everybody judges me. That of course, they read the headlines. They don't even know anything, and they're oh, you're
Yeah.
just. They think I'm Wesley Snipes. Like I just didn't pay a dollar. I paid a lot of money, but I didn't pay the right amount, so I'm guilty. But that being said, they mentioned to me, "Look, we just saw you pay your taxes. We know you're not harming people, and we know at the end of the day that you have a lot of cash here. So this is your choice. You want to play ball or not?" And I immediately said, "I'm not here to fight you whatsoever. Where do I sign?" Yes.
Oh, I'd have signed that shit too.
Yeah, and I was scared, and it was my first time dealing with the federal government, and I didn't know if I was going to be arrested. I have kids, man. I want
Yeah,
my job as a father. You're a father is to provide and protect, and the biggest thing I'm dealing with right now is the fact that I'm losing that ability to provide and protect, and I'm probably going to get a I don't know how long of a prison sentence, but I'm going to get one, and the fact that I can't be here for my wife and kids is actually killing me the most by far. I
yeah.
don't care, but forget all the money, forget all the other stuff, whatever. Of course, we all like that, want that, whatever, but that is killing me the most.
I got you. So they take your money, you sign the agreement, and you don't want to stop. You decide to get it all, basically just keep on rolling. And it really kind of turns up the heat as far as the volume at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to sound like it was a get out of jail free card, but to me, it kind of was. I was like, you know what? If this is the worst case, I can live with this.
Yeah.
I'll just go build my business back and make the money that they took, and more importantly, just build it bigger,
Yeah.
which is what I did. And it kind of made me feel like I had protection. Clearly, not from the government, but just from the worst case scenario, which I'm wrong about because now I'm looking at going away. But my biggest fear was that is going to prison, not being able to be a father.
Right.
So to me, I felt like, hey, you know what? Worst case scenario, I'm going to give away some money, pay extra taxes. I'll call it. That's okay. I can deal with that all day long. But I was wrong.
And then your volume of your bets start to increase at that point. And is that
So
okay?
yeah, dramatic. In fact, so I was 39. When I turned 40, I caught a little winning streak in Las Vegas. I went 12 trips in a row where I won, and which is unheard of. And I'm talking pretty big numbers. 200,000 to a million to 2 million. So when you win 12 trips in a row, you kind of feel unbeatable.
Yeah.
And so money was really no object for me at that time for me and my lifestyle. And I kind of never looked back. I just built my business bigger and bigger because I had a bigger bankroll, and I was using the Las Vegas circuit along with going around the country to other casinos to build and get myself in a position where money wasn't an object, but let's use this as a marketing tool to go out and get more customers. And that's what I did.
Okay. And then is that where the situation led in with Otani and his interpreter?
So I met Ippei. Let's see, I got rated October 5th, 2023. I think I met him 20 months prior to that. So let's call it, yeah, it was 21.
Okay.
And I met him at a poker game after the Padres played the Angels down in San Diego. I was friendly with some of the players and hung out with them, played golf with them, and went down to the game, watched the game. Then afterwards, went with the team to hang out and just play poker in their private room. Yeah, so there was
That's
like
insane.
first base coach, third base coach, couple players, Ipe. It was just yeah.
Wow. And some of these guys just think you're a professional gambler. Obviously, some of them are, doing the service with you, but most of them just think you're just a hellified gambler and, good time to be. I can tell you give off good vibes anyway.
I appreciate it. I think because we would golf for pretty large amounts on the golf course. Five
Mhm.
10,000 a hole, and obviously, I wasn't afraid to gamble, so they were kind of intrigued, because I wasn't a baseball player, right? And
Right.
and at the end of the day, I mean, it was very obvious that I was flying on private jets to casinos and having a blast, and I would even invite these guys to come play Shadow Creek in Las Vegas or come out to Vegas and have a nice dinner with us, or do the some of the fun events that we were doing,
Right.
and so they were well aware of my lifestyle and the fact that I was doing pretty well. And
Okay.
I think I'm more intrigued that when I'm around these guys and celebrities and athletes in particular, I didn't treat them any different than as if they were a brother, and they're tired of everyone, bowing to them and almost making them feel awkward.
Yeah.
So when you're just one of the bros and Joes, they love that.
Yeah. So you meet him at a poker game and that just kind of progresses from there.
Yeah, he was actually betting on his phone through a different website.
Oh,
I
and
can't. Yeah, I don't think it was DraftKings at the time. I don't know which one, but he was betting on his phone, and actually, a friend of mine is the one who saw him betting and said, you know, Matt does that. And then we struck a conversation, and then it started with a really small account. It was $1,000 a game and an $8,000 credit line. And that proceeded to grow drastically fast because his gambling addiction was one of the worst I've seen. And clearly, you know, he never showed any signs of at all, in fact, of, you know, concerns really. Clearly he was losing tons of money, but he would even make, if you look at the text messages that they released, the government released all of our text messages, you'll see that he makes fun of himself all the time about how bad of a gambler he was. And frankly, so do I, you know, about myself, right? Like we all kind of joke, everybody does, and oh, I'm terrible at this or whatever. And, you know, he would laugh. And, you know, I'm not saying it was funny because nobody likes losing money. It wasn't like he was really enjoying it. But at the end of the day, he was just kind of mocking the situation. So I never asked if it was Shohei Otani's bets or his. I frankly didn't want to. I didn't want to
Yeah.
know. And people ask me all the time, how do you give an interpreter $40 million in credit? Well, it started off with $8,000 in credit, and guess
Yeah.
what? He paid, and then he paid, and he paid, and he asked for more, and I gave him more because you know I provided a service.
Yeah.
He liked my service, and guess what? We had a great relationship. He was very honorable. To this day, I feel terrible for the situation we're both in, but I never thought it would escalate to this. I would have stopped it. And did I know he was stealing the money? I had no idea. I didn't even know that Shohei Ohtani sent a wire until like the second or third wire, and because it wasn't going to me. And
Right.
once I found out it was Shohei Ohtani, the name on the wire transfer, I about shit my pants because you know I was like, how do I handle this, right? And truth be told, I just said I'm not going to even get involved and ask any questions because I don't really want to know the answer. You know, it's at the end of the day, you know, come to find out it wasn't Shohei betting, but I didn't know, and frankly, I didn't want to know.
Right.
But what I was happy about was there was zero bets on baseball, not one bet the entire time. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Anyone who says otherwise, I can tell you right now, there was zero bets on baseball. There was no fixed games or betting against them or any of that stuff going on. 80% of the bets were on soccer. And I say soccer, I mean leagues and teams in different countries I've never heard of. It was the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I've never seen an addiction like that. And it's absolutely terrible that this poor guy's sitting in prison because of it. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be in trouble. I just feel bad that an addiction has ruined his life. I mean, he had one of the best jobs in the world. He had a great relationship. The whole world loved him, including Shohei. And I have to feel a little obligation to that. Whether I didn't force him to bet or do any of that stuff, but you know, I have a heart, and I feel bad that we're even having this discussion about that because it's not right. You know, to see somebody sit in prison for this.
Now you mentioned something there. You said when they sent the wire transfer, it wasn't going to you. Did you have like a shell company or something like that set up that it was going to?
Truth be told, I've been debanked by every bank in the country, so I and even more now than ever. Like literally by every bank. In fact, I'm to a credit union now, to be honest, and it's terrible. At this moment, Wade, I don't even have a credit card. So
Gee.
you want to hear a sad story? I went to see my attorney today, my tax attorney. I pull in, and his building is requires, you know, one of those slips for or paid parking. And
Yeah.
when I left, they didn't give me enough of a credit on the little card to get through the thing, and so you have to use a debit or credit card. Well, I don't have one. I've been debanked, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, how do I even get out of here? So I have to go ask somebody to use their card and give them $2 so they could use the damn card to get me out of the damn parking. The other day I was at Starbucks. My wife wasn't with me, right? And I couldn't purchase a coffee because I was in the airport, in Dallas airport, because it's cashless. And I don't have a debit card. And it's just so embarrassing to walk up to some random person and say, look, I'm gonna buy you a coffee. If you buy me a coffee, I'm gonna pay for
Yeah.
you. But yeah, all I can do is look in the mirror. It's I got to be accountable. I don't agree with some of the things that are going on, but you know, it's my fault.
Okay. So you had to have them send the money somewhere else for somebody else to get help.
Yeah, I did. For example, again, I didn't have Bank of America. They already cut me off. Chase, you know, Union Bank. I can name them all. I've been cut off every single one. So, yeah, I ran out of banks, and people think and that's why I'm receiving some money laundering charges. Well, I wasn't laundering money to hide anything. I was laundering money through different people because I had to. It wasn't like so I could filter it back in and not pay taxes and I was laundering money through different people because I literally was forced to, and nowhere else to take.
Yeah. Can't even do that with your own self. Uh, I remember there was a time years ago. It was when like the jerseys first started getting popular. We could buy them from China and resell them over here. Well, I was buying some, and it was starting to do pretty good. And this is long, statute of limitations long gone off this. But I was, getting to where I was going and buying and sending money Western Union about every 2 weeks. And I would go to one day and it was like, you can't send anymore. And I'm like, why? And I was like, have I reached a limit or something? She's like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, you're gonna give me a reason why I can't send it, or you're gonna say no. And she said, you're on the Western Union blacklist. And I was like, how the hell do you get on that? She's like, well, it's suspected that you could possibly be funding terrorism. I'm like, funding terrorism? I'm buying clothes. I'm like, I said, I'm getting something for you. See the tracking. I mean, but I was just like, Jesus Christ. So I just now was actually able to send somebody Western Union like a couple of months ago. I guess you can fall off of the blacklist, but
Wow. Yeah.
yeah,
So I guess you're back on the you're on the fly zone now, huh?
yeah, I'm on the fly zone with Western Union.
Well, I'm on the no zone on everything. Venmo, Cash App, Apple Pay. I am not like I can't even do anything.
It's gonna be very difficult for you to, like, function in today's society.
It's very very difficult. I'll be honest. Like it's really sad because my wife owns a legal clothing line business, athleisure wear called Coco on the Go. Great clothing line. It's very similar to Lululemon.
Right.
And her website, she's been in business 10 years. And so about a year ago, American Express shut her off. So she cannot on her because she's married to me. We've never even commingled our funds. She can't receive if you want to go on right now on her website and purchase with your American Express pair of leggings for your wife or girlfriend. Can't. You can only use Visa or MasterCard. American Express cut her off. And she has 800 credit score. She's never been late, pays everything on time. And so now her clients can't even purchase Amex through because of my situation. So it's sad because they're punishing us who are trying to do it. Like I'm no longer running a legal gambling operation. I just paid my restitution, just under $1.7 million to the government. Most people don't pay the restitution their whole lifetime. I've already paid it before I see the judge. Um, I'm trying to do everything right, and yet we're still being punished for my previous actions. And all we're trying to do is make money so we can continue to live and survive. You know, it's not like we're running a legal business, so it's very difficult. Yeah, it's going to be tough.
No, I can't imagine. Um, so you're getting extremely large bets, like you said. Start out at $8,000 credit limit. You don't know if you can trust this guy to pay when he's supposed to pay, but he is. He's paying up. When he goes down, you pay. He asks for an increased credit limit. I understand the logic. You give him more, and as long as they pay, I'm going to keep letting them give as much limit as they want. As long as they're paying. And then when you find out the name that's on it, then obviously you think that's kind of the even though it probably does scare you a little bit at first, you're thinking, "I don't have to worry about getting paid at this."
Absolutely, 100%.
I
I
got
mean,
the I got the worst fucking gambler in the world with an unlimited amount of money. This is a gold mine.
that's correct. And to be honest, I didn't know where this was going to go, and he already at that point was down like another 2 million. So to me, it's like this could be endless supply. You know,
Yeah,
truthfully, of course. And when you're a gambler yourself, you know, you go through both highs and lows in your thought pattern, meaning that you think about all the worst case scenarios and you think about all the possible possibilities of the best case, right? So you're thinking, oh, I could book this guy by himself the rest of my life, and he could afford to lose $100 million literally, and it won't even affect his lifestyle. You know, because Shohei Ohtani, as you know, makes more money than anyone. It's
yeah,
just in endorsements alone. And then for me, what's the worst case? I just got to make sure I could pay him if he wins. Well, he at that time it came to a point he already owed me like 10, $12 million. So for him to win back that 10, 12 million, he had to overcome so many things. You know, it wasn't like he was betting a million a game; he's betting $100,000 a game, and he'd have to go on the biggest run heater of his life to win that back. So I kind of was in a really great pole position considering the situation, and of course I just continued to give more credit because he kept paying.
yeah. No, and you any bookmaker would. I mean, they're going through what's called the chase. I don't even know if you got that kind of money. I don't even know if it's the chase. I think you're just doing it to do it. But a typical gambler, when they get down, they start chasing it. There's a very specific episode in the Sopranos TV series. I don't know if you're a fan of Sopranos, but it's called chasing it. And it's where he's betting everything and everything's fucking losing. It doesn't matter what it is, lose a horse race by a foot, lose a football, because of a safety. I mean, everything. And he's getting bridge loans from Hesh for $250,000. And it was just like everything was going wrong. And then finally he just pays it and like he doesn't gamble no more the rest of the show. Cause like sometimes what you got to do, you just got to hard stop it. But it's so hard for people that are chasing it. That is a big thing in the gambling business.
Totally agree, and I've been that guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
I,
do.
I try to be disciplined, and people ask me all the time, why do you even bet when you have this conglomerate business? I'm like, well, because it's an addiction, and I love gambling, and that's why I bet.
And that too, like what you said earlier, though, if I don't have any interest in the game on Monday night, if I don't have any vested interest in the team or the players, but I bet on it, now I've got a reason to sit down and watch, even if it's a bad game. Now, if I got to sit down and watch the Browns and the Broncos or whatever the case may be, I'm sorry if there are any fans of those teams out there. Broncos are actually not bad. Somewhere along in those lines, it gives me a reason to sit down and watch that game and be vested in it. Like you said, it gives me 3 hours of, that little feeling that you get inside, and it's just something that makes the game worth it, even if you don't have an emotional attachment to the team.
I would go as far as to say this way that if gambling didn't exist, I would say that 50% at least of NFL, NBA, MLB would be down, 50% attendance. TV,
100%.
in person, et cetera, probably much worse, but at least 50% would be not watching the game.
Oh,
And yeah, for
100%.
sure. And another thing is like, let's take that example you said. If it's a boring game or a blowout, let's say it's 35-0, you would lose viewership on TV. Probably maybe 20%, 30%, but it's actually they stay longer because of the over under bets or live betting or whatever. So the amount of money they make off gambling is ridiculous, and they don't realize, or people don't realize, it's not so much taking the bets. The NFL gains viewerships, which gains sponsor money, which gains all of that. So yeah, they don't own DraftKings, and they're getting paid as a sponsorship, but the reality is all their other sponsors are getting more views and paying more money because people are watching it because of gambling.
Yep, and they know that shit. They can try to sugarcoat it all they want. They know good and well that's the way it is. I mean, years ago, Jimmy the Greek used to have his segment on there where he would talk about the spread and all that, so people forget about that guy. But I mean, they know that people are hip to this. And Al Michaels would always make these subtle remarks like that. Well, it's over and it's over. Something
Exactly.
along those lines, just to let you know.
I remember you say that play affected some people in a
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah, Chris Collinsworth will do that a lot too. Like, I know that play was important to some people out there,
That's right. And
and
now
a
they're
lot
more
of
open
times it
about it.
is. Yeah, they're a lot
Now
more
they
open.
talk about it. Yeah.
I remember specifically, but it was the Chargers and the Steelers game, meaningless game, and it was like all Philip Rivers had to do was just throw the incomplete pass or whatever. It gets tipped off, and then Palomalu wound. You thought he was down. He gets up and like runs it all the way back, falls in for the touchdown. Some said the game was over. Then they come back and they gave him the 6 points. Obviously, when they gave him the 6 points, I was a very unhappy camper. But they said that they should have called it down the next day. And they said the amount of money. I forgot how many millions it cost Vegas by that wrong call. It was crazy. But yeah, people know about it. They're hip to it. I mean, they're watching it.
Of course. Everybody knows.
So when did this whole thing crumble now for the second time that you get rated?
October 5th, 2023. I just flew back. I was at Resorts World for the weekend, and they chartered me and 10 of my friends to the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. We flew the jet out there. I obviously went to the game. I bet 200,000 on the Cowboys. They blew out whoever they were playing. It was great. I was down 1,500,000 at the casino. I came back that Sunday night after the game. We flew back. I gambled. I wanted it all back plus 1,000,000. And so I had one of the actually winning trips at Resort World, which is far and few between for me. Get on a plane, come home. That was on a Monday. And then on Wednesday, October 5th, I had 29 federal agents and a dog here at my house. I walked out of my house at 9:33 a.m. with my son, and he was 2 years old. I was putting him in a car seat, and I heard FBI freeze. And I look over, and I had 8 red dots on my chest of AR rifles, and I realized that it wasn't a joke. They had the battle gear and the shield and that thing to, you know, knock the door down,
Yeah.
and that's when it all started. And I was on my driveway watching my wife come out in handcuffs, crying, and that was a rough moment for me because putting her through that and putting my son through all, just I felt like a loser because granted we had a great lifestyle and all this fun and all that shit, but this is a moment that people will never forget, and
Yeah,
talk about having some memories that you want to get rid of that you can't. That's one of them.
yeah. Now, what all are they charged, or what did they originally charge you with? Has that changed or dwindled down to right now? Because, like you said earlier, you're only a few weeks away from seeing a judge.
Yeah, so I'm facing still 18-year max, but as you know, those are when they throw out the word max, it's usually
Yeah,
much higher than what's real. So it's 10 years for money laundering, 5 years for falsified tax return, 3 years for bookmaking. My actual federal guidelines are 36 to 47 months, and that's kind of where the judge is going to come in with the prosecution and make his decision. So probably 3 years is kind of what my attorney is trying to mitigate down to as little as 1 or 2, hoping, I did pay restitution. I've done everything that the court has asked me to do for 21 months straight. I see a mental health therapist every Monday, Gamblers Anonymous every week. I pee in a cup for drugs, which is funny because I don't do drugs. I drive down and if they want to check through my phones and go through my cameras in my house, they do that. They come in here periodically and do their check report, make sure I'm still not bookmaking. My phone's on a monitoring system. They can see every single text message and phone call I make and listen to it, which I pay for. So I've cooperated in regards to, I pled guilty immediately. I didn't fight the charge, saving them money from fighting. And I've tried to, just show them that, hey, I committed the crime. I'm guilty for it. I just want to get it over with and deal with it the best I can. So I'm hoping that all that mitigation will allow them to, give me some leniency and, hopefully minimize the prison sentence.
yeah. Was that on a lawyer's advice that you plead guilty to it and not fight it, or that was something you did on your own?
Both. I knew I had no case.
Yeah,
Fighting for me was a waste of time and money. And then more importantly, I knew that all I would do was piss off the federal government even more.
right.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're going to fight a case, you better have a case. And I had no case.
Correct. Or just, just hoping for the best in some cases. I think Diddy probably Diddy was hoping for the best in his situation, but it's a lot different than what you got going on. Uh, so I guess now, like typically when you're in something like this and it's going on, like I was told, I share with you the situation I had where I was charged with, murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. My lawyer told me under any circumstances, don't reply to people on Facebook. Don't have conversation. Don't talk about it. Don't go back and forth with people because I'm a very combative person too. Like especially if somebody's saying something about me is true, my immediate reaction is to jump and go at it. So that was hard. And I had to basically not do that for 5 years. You're kind of doing the opposite thing here and you're talking about it freely to a certain degree. Um, did you get much pushback from your legal counsel from doing that?
Actually, I got in an argument with her again this morning. My attorney, Diane Bass, is great. She's fantastic. The problem is that she has one job, and that job is to keep me out of prison, mitigate my situation, and to fight against the prosecution and help me. Right. She knows I have 5 children, and she wants to do that. So that I appreciate that, and she's good at it. The other problem is that she's not understanding that I am a father of 5 who now owes the United States government over $10 million in taxes, and I'm losing everything. And the reality is that whether I go to prison or not, or how long I spend in prison, I got to come out and feed 5 kids and provide somewhat of a lifestyle. So I've had a really tough time with this decision. She hates my Instagram, hates my social media, hates that I'm talking to you, hates that I'm doing any of this, and I understand why. But I am not a person that's going to sit and do what the sheep do. I'm
Yeah.
not a person that's going to allow these situations to overtake me and who I am and my character. Whether it's wrong or not, fine. Every attorney that's watching this would tell me, that I'm stupid.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. That's okay. I've been called many names, and at the end of the day, like I'm doing what I feel is best for me and my family, and I have to start building. So the minute I got in trouble, I started writing my book, Recalibrate. My book says everything that we're covering and 10 times more. And the reality is that I'm not perfect. I made a lot of mistakes. But if someone could learn from my mistakes, conquer an addiction, learn how to deal with adversity, get a stronger mindset, these are all things that I deal with on a daily basis, right? for 2 years, I've been waking up every day, not knowing my future, watching all of my assets gone. I had a Rolls Royce, I had a Ferrari, I had a Bentley, all that stuff's gone. Who cares? And care less. But the reality is, I'm talking about feeding my kids and providing, keeping them in schools and stuff like that. So those are the things that matter to me the most. And I'm going to fight to do whatever I can to mitigate that for even after my prison sentence, which is what I'm working on now. All of the stuff I'm doing is to monetize and figure out my new path, right?
Yeah.
And, some people don't get it. They may not see my vision. And guess what? That makes me know that I'm doing something right. I'm okay with that because at the end of the day, what I do is definitely different than most. And I believe that that's the way I want my life to be. And that's the path I'm chosen. And I do want people to learn. I mean, I've had a lot of positive things come off my Instagram, right? People that have, really resonated with my situation that are in federal cases or state cases and who are in depression, who are resorting to drugs and alcohol, who are sitting, with no motivation factor to even exercise or do anything positive. For me, it's like you don't need to sit there. You're not dead.
Yeah.
Get off the couch, move, go do some positive stuff for your start actually rebuilding your life and your career. It's never too late. I know that sounds cliche and corny, but it's really the truth. And even if I was 75 years old, I'd be saying the same thing because at the end of the day, man, it's you only live one time. Let's just make the best of every situation.
No,
So yeah,
absolutely.
she hates it. To answer your question, my attorney hates it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's so right. Like you said, you waiting every day. I went through that period of waiting for like 5 years, and that was the worst 5 years I had ever spent. And, I had a pretty decent job for the area that I was at. And I went from making, six figures to having no job and had to go apply for food stamps and Medicaid real quick. And that will humble you. And like you said, then you got the pressure of trying to provide for the family and not knowing what to do and not knowing what's going on. And in my case, it was possibly preparing for a lengthy trial because I was innocent of what they were charging me of, so I was going to fucking trial. Yeah, if it went to that point, we were going. Like, there wasn't no plea deals. I always said it was either 3 meals or plea deals. There were no 3 meals or no plea deals. I was not pleading to shit in my case. Luckily, it didn't go that far, and it got, straightened out, but that not knowing, brother, was so heavy on me every day, but like you said, you gotta figure out something to do, so I was like, I started listening to podcasts, and I was like, "Alright, innocent people go to jail?" "Yeah, they do all the time, wow," and then I kinda started listening, I'm like, "I wouldn't mind doing a podcast thing," and so that's kinda grew into this, and it's allowed me to be able to talk to many people with a lot of different stories, and, now I'm able to go on podcasts and share my story. I had a gentleman reach out to me that was in a situation where he was framed for something like that that he didn't do, and I brought him on the show and talked about it, and we've remained friends, so it kinda like, I love what you're doing, to be quite honest. I know your lawyer probably hates it, but you're letting people know, like, "Look, this is the" anybody in your shoes, I think, given your situation, if you said like everything we've talked about, flying friends to Dallas, staying in penthouses, got a guy that's a horrible gambler betting $1 million a game. Not very many people's gonna say, nah, I don't want to do that. You're gonna jump at that. I would do it in a minute. So it's so different than any other crime like that. You're not holding a gun to anybody's head. You're not putting drugs in their veins or up their nose. You're not killing people. It's a different. Yes, is it a crime? Yes, it's a different type of crime, but it's one that I think people need to at least be aware of, that this kind of thing can happen if you get to I mean, it can happen at any level, but especially if you get to this level, it can really have the more eyes on it. Because I remember I was telling a friend of mine that I was interviewing you today, and he said, I remember hearing something about that on the Orange County Housewives show about the guy Ryan or something like that, saying something about that. I don't know his last name. I'd butcher that thing if I tried to say it, but I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
so
I was on that show, not not wanting to be on it, but I was on it for. I made a little guest appearance, and of course, I had about 4 old fashions that night, and did not make myself look very good, which I tend to do when I have 4 old fashions. But yeah, I mean, I've made some errors. There's no question. I'm just myself, man. At the end of the day, my my wife, my attorney, they all tried to muzzle me. I said it's not happening, and I would rather be who I am and show my kids that too. Good, bad, and different. And I think people resonate with who I am because I'm authentic. And
yeah,
a lot of people hate me. I got haters all day long. I talk shit on my Instagram, whatever. That's fine, and I
right,
defend myself. I try to be less combative than I really would like to be. I
yeah,
mean, some of the things that they say, man, I own a jujitsu studio. I'd love to invite them over and we can have a little fun, with our fists as opposed to our mouths. But at the end of the day, I'm 50 years old, man. I'm trying to just be a really good dad, a good husband, and be a
Yeah.
better person. I'm not perfect. I never will be, and I've lived a great life. I've done a lot of great things, but trust me, I'm just getting started. There's a lot more coming, and if somebody watching this could learn that no matter what the adversity or things that are in their face seem overwhelming,
Yeah.
it's temporary. Like I was in a bohemian prison with my wife for a day and a half. Okay, I went to the Bahamas for our bachelorette party. I won $165,000. It's all in my book, and I decided to not declare the winnings through customs, which they have in the Florida, or excuse me, in the Bahamas as I'm flying to Florida. U.S. Customs is in actually the Bahamas. So when I went through there and I hit that button, right, green and red, of course it came red. I did not check that I had over $10,000 in U.S. cash. Well, clearly that's I didn't know this, but that's a felony. It's called failure to declare.
Yeah.
Well, I'm flagged because I was known to be a bookmaker. I was raided in 2014, and clearly, if the government grabs that money, they know I'm not going to come ask for it because I can't even really go down that route. So I know that. So I wasn't like trying to hide it for tax purposes. I was trying to hide it because I know they're gonna grab it. Just keep
Yeah.
it. So anyway, I had it all mixed all in my bags and everything else. Well, guess what? I got stopped. I got pulled aside. And for a day and a half, I was in a Bohemian prison with not knowing where my wife was. U.S. Embassy wouldn't help me. Had no idea what was going on. It was a literally two man brick jail cell with four people in it. I was the only white guy in that cell, and let's be honest, they definitely. I had a Rolex watch, and there were definitely some interesting conversations going on. I thought I was going to have to really defend myself drastically, and I
Yeah.
came in there ready to go. I didn't know what was going on. One kid just committed murder. He was 19. The other kid was caught for drug smuggling in Florida, and the other guy was on crack. I mean, he was shaking like a leaf. He was all cracked out, and I had no idea where my wife was. She was going through, literally convulsions of hyperventilating because she was being arrested for just being with me, and they didn't care. And so, where I'm going with this is, there's been many moments in my life. I've had a gun to my head where you don't know what's going to happen next, and you feel like you just want to die. It's the end of the world. We've all been in those moments, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what's going on, but it's only temporary. Even this, I'm about to, walk into probably a federal prison camp in, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. It's going to feel like the end of the world for me, walking away from my 4-year-old boy. But it's temporary, and whatever you do at those moments is what makes you who you are next. And those are the moments you got to dig deep and grab your mindset and become somebody that you don't even know that you have within yourself. And I hope to always resonate that with people on my Instagram or social media or whatever I do, because nobody's perfect. And guess what, man, we're all human, but we are much stronger than we think we are.
Yeah.
And you can dig deep, and you could find stuff within ourselves that we didn't know we had.
Well, I'm not gonna hold up too much more of your time, man. Do you mind? Is that gun story quick? I'm just curious now.
Yeah, it's it's in my book as well. I had a situation where when I was younger, 30, I was really good shape, and I thought I was. That was when UFC was kind of Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell and all that stuff was going on, and I was kind of much bigger than I am, and I just thought I was a badass. I was 30 years old, so when people owed me money, I wasn't afraid to go knock on their door. So I made a poor choice and drove to Fresno, California. A guy who owed me 114,000, and I just paid him 88,000 the week before, and he decided to tell me to go fuck myself. And I
That's
really worked him.
that's the worst when you fucking pay them the week before and they ain't got it to get back to you. I hate you.
Yeah. And believe me, I'm not an angel. I've owed bookmakers money, couldn't pay them. I've had to, sell shit. I had to do things that my whole life. I'm a degenerate gambler. I've been there, and I've had plenty of clients do the same to me, whatever. But you said it best. When you take somebody's money and a week later you tell them, to fly up a tree, it's you might as well try to sleep with their wife.
Yeah.
So I drove down to Fresno and got to his house. It was just got dark, and his kid answered the door, about a 15, 16-year-old boy. And then next, he came to the door, and I surprised him. Of course, he was very surprised I was there. I didn't know how I found out where he lived. But the conversation proceeded to turn into a gun in his pants, and pulling it out and showing it to me, and letting me know that he's not paying me. And I calmly said to him as I was shitting my pants that you might as well use that, because you're in a position where I know exactly where you and your family live, and now you're threatening my life after screwing me. There's going to be bigger problems, and the people that are going to come back here are not going to be so nice. So it's up to you how you want to handle it. And I was definitely stupid because at the end of the day, for a hundred and something $1,000, I'm risking my life. I mean, it was really a dumb 30-year-old egotistical man making a decision that I regret. But fortunately for me, he ended up paying the tab the next day. He tried to negotiate it, and I settled for the amount that I paid him, and we squashed the whole deal. So
That's typically how it goes. Like, at least give me what I just gave you a fucking week ago. Like, come
correct,
on. Yeah.
correct, exactly. And so I was happy just that nobody got hurt, and more importantly, this dumb decision I made ended up not ruining my life or ending my life, to be honest.
Right. Well, I tell you what, this sounds like a movie, man. Is there any plans for a doc or a movie on this thing? Because I, for one, would be hooked.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're in the process of a documentary and scripted series and movie is definitely in the plans. And those things take time, but
Yeah.
I do have attorneys that are negotiating with some high powered people in Hollywood, and I'm hoping that it gets to that. That's my hope and dream at this point, is turning this into a positive, and being on stages one day talking to people about my story, and kind of, obviously I need to make money legally, and I'm happy to do that now.
When you've got the charisma to do it, you've definitely got the story to do it. I think it can appeal to everyone. You would even be good at going around and speaking to some of the campuses at the colleges, warning the kids themselves about getting into the dangers of gambling and things like that. So I mean, I know that your immediate outlook might be a little grim, but I think your farther outlook is much more brighter. You've got that. There ain't no other to say. You've got that dog in you. I can tell. And dogs don't stay down. They get up and they keep going. And I think you're going to do fine, man. You're going to find something in your niche that works, and it's going to generate the money. And it's going to. I think it's going to be fine.
I appreciate that, Wade. I can tell you got the dog in you too, bro.
Yeah, I mean, well, you got to, and you never know that you do have it until something like this happens to you, and you find yourself in it, and it's like, do you lay down and die, or do you stand up and keep going? And obviously, you're standing up, you keep going, you're hitting it every day. I love your inspirational stuff on your Instagram. We're going to tag that Instagram in the show notes of this episode. We're also going to put a link to your book, Recalibrate. I apologize, I wasn't able to read it in time, but we just scheduled this last week and I was out of town most of this week, so I am going to give it a read, and I might even go back and do a little review on it. But look, we wish you the best, and whatever the outcome is, hopefully, it's the best possible outcome. Is maybe some time served in community service. But I'm sure if you go away, I can already tell you're the type of guy that'll use the time wisely, but use it to his benefit as much as possible, and you come back stronger than ever. And thank you very much for doing this podcast. Thank you for your time. I know right now it's valuable with your family. So give them my best as well. And I really want to thank you for coming on the show, man.
Thank you, Wade. And you've been great inspiration, and obviously ask great questions. So I really appreciate you having me on your amazing podcast.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Well, everybody go check out Recalibrate from Matt. We'll keep you updated on the situation as it plays out. And that'll do it for this week's episode. We'll see you next week on Crime and Entertainment. Matt, we appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you, Wade. Appreciate you, bud. Have a great one. All right.
You too.
Take
All right.
care.